Freddy stood over the patch of freshly turned soil, his paws working in a blur. He shoved the seeds into the dark earth, patting the surface flat with rapid, uneven strikes. His tail twitched in a rhythmic, frantic beat. He stood back, chest heaving, waiting for the ground to break. He watched the horizon. He counted the seconds. The sun hung low, painting the pines in long, orange streaks. Freddy paced in tight, jagged circles around the perimeter. He stopped, eyes locked on the dirt. Nothing moved. The soil remained flat, dry, and silent. As the sun began to dip behind the tree line, the last light flickered out, leaving the patch barren. His frustration surged. He pivoted, muscles coiled, and swiped a sharp claw at the nearby bush, snapping thin branches. "This is useless," he barked at the empty, cooling air. He turned his back on the garden, ears flattened, ready to abandon the spot and walk away for good. He halted. A phantom echo resonated in his mind. A voice from long ago. "Good things grow slowly." Freddy froze, one foot already pointed toward the forest trail. He looked back at the patch. The earth was dry, mapped with deep, thirsty cracks that seemed to mock his haste. He turned around, his movements still sharp and jagged, but now directed toward the creek bed. He found a heavy, rusted bucket half buried in the silt. He gripped the handle until his knuckles throbbed. The walk back was a struggle against his own nature. Every muscle wanted to sprint, to dump the water and be done. But the weight of the bucket forced a slower, deliberate gait. He reached the patch. He did not throw the water. He tilted the bucket with trembling paws. The liquid hit the dirt. It hissed. Dust rose in a fine, choking cloud before the ground drank it down. He poured until the soil turned a deep, rich brown, erasing the cracks. He stood over the damp patch, his breath evening out, watching the darkness of the wet earth expand until the entire space was saturated. For the first time, he did not look at the horizon. He looked at the mud. The rhythm became a cage. Every morning, Freddy hauled the heavy bucket from the creek, his muscles burning as he soaked the patch. The soil darkened, then baked, then cracked again under the midday sun. He watched for changes that never arrived. By the fourth day, the silence of the garden felt like a physical weight pressing against his chest. He stood over the dirt, his claws twitching, his paws hovering inches above the surface. The urge to dig, to claw through the crust and verify the seeds were still there, became a dull ache in his gut. He gripped his own tail to keep his hands occupied. On the sixth day, he knelt, his face inches from the dry earth, searching for a single sign of life. Nothing. He lunged backward, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. He stood up and forced his gaze toward the far horizon, locking his eyes on the distant pines. He counted the clouds. He counted the swaying branches. He remained rigid, a statue of forced patience, fighting the frantic, clawing need to undo his work. His spirit reached its breaking point, yet he did not move. He stared at the empty line where the sky met the trees, refusing to look down again. The 10th morning arrived with the same gray light and the same heavy bucket. Freddy trudged toward the patch, his eyes fixed on the distant tree line, conditioned to expect the familiar, barren crust. He set the bucket down with a dull thud. He prepared to kneel, his muscles coiled for the grueling routine of clearing stray debris. Then he stopped. A movement in his peripheral vision caught him. He leaned forward, squinting against the rising sun. There, near the center of the patch, the soil was not smooth. A tiny, jagged fissure had appeared. From the dark, damp earth, a single, vibrant sliver of green pushed upward. It was impossibly thin, a sharp needle of life piercing the crust. Freddy froze. His breath caught in his throat, a sharp, ragged sound that died instantly in the quiet morning air. He did not blink. He did not reach out to touch it, terrified that the slightest pressure might crush the fragile stem. He stood completely still, his paws pressed firmly into the grass, his entire being vibrating with the shock of the sight. The world felt suddenly larger. The silence he had fought for days was no longer empty. It was holding its breath, just as he was. He watched the tiny, defiant shoot catch the first direct beam of sunlight, its color glowing with an intensity that made the surrounding earth look dull and lifeless. The following weeks were a blur of sustained effort. Freddy hauled water every dawn, his routine now rhythmic rather than desperate. He methodically cleared the weeds that encroached upon the patch, his movements precise and calm. Slowly, the stems thickened, stretching toward the light until they burst open into vibrant, fragrant flowers. The garden was no longer a barren patch of dirt. It was a dense, colorful canopy of life. Freddy sat beside the blooming flowers, his breath slow and steady. He watched a bee land on a single petal, its wings vibrating in the warm air before it drifted to the next blossom. He did not rush to pull a weed or check the soil. He simply existed in the space he had cultivated. He stayed until the shadows stretched long across the grass, cooling the earth. The silence that had once felt like an empty, agonizing void now felt full. He looked at the flowers, then back at the soil, finally recognizing the truth. The quiet he had endured was not an absence of progress. It was the sound of something coming to life. He remained seated as the sun vanished, perfectly content to listen to the garden grow.